Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Welcome to today's episode. Today I am chatting with Pam Baker. She is the founder and CEO of Widowhood, and she is also the co-author of Where's the Key to the Safe, which we will learn more about today. She has also two podcasts, one called The Lost Love Stories, and she also had another one with her husband, John, called Coffee, Cancer, and Cocktails. And today we'll be talking about her life, John's life, and just what led her now to be a co-author, a podcast host, and have your own foundation to help other widows. So welcome, Pam.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm grateful that you are here. And so we're going to be diving in and chatting and getting to learn who you are. We already found out we have in common that you live in
Mhm.
Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, and I used to live there. So tell us about
Mhm.
your upbringing and a little about your love story with John and how you ended up in
Sure.
Atlanta.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Vermont in a tiny, tiny little town 10 minutes from Canada in the New York corner. And didn't love the snow. So I went to college in Florida in St. Pete by the beach. And I was a freshman. My freshman year, I was working for campus activities as my little work study. And in walked this handsome guy one day. And I was like, who is that? And my boss, who had graduated from the college too, was like, oh, that's John Baker. He's a big volleyball guy. Like, don't bother, blah, blah, blah. And so, of course, that piqued my interest even more. And yeah, we ended up meeting a few weeks later and started dating when I was 18 years old and he was 20. So, went to stayed at college together. He graduated. He's from the DC area and he graduated, moved back, and we had a 2-year long distance relationship through college, which was challenging. And then I spent my summers in DC in college after my first year. So had a lot of time there and ended up being his sister's roommate in college after our freshman
Wow.
year. So she's one of my best friends, lives here 10 minutes from me. And yeah, so we dated for 5.5 years. In that time, he became a financial advisor and got offered the office to open the branch in Atlanta. That's how we ended up here.
Okay.
And that was the early 90s. And I came with him. We were dating for 5.5 years and then broke up for a year and a half because I wanted to get married and he was not ready. And I was like, okay, you got to figure your stuff
Ultimatum.
out. Yeah,
You're
you got
like,
to figure it out.
ultimatum.
So I moved back to Vermont and we stayed broken up for a year and a half, but it was amicable. So we talked all the time, even though we dated other people and, we're kind of going on. I moved around, moved to Charleston, then ended up back in Athens, Georgia. And yeah, then I was living with his sister again. She was getting her master's at UGA. And it was her birthday party. John was seeing some very, very seriously at that point. He had brought her home for Thanksgiving and the whole thing. And my sister-in-law said, my best friend at the time, she said, I want to have a birthday party. I want to invite my brother because he and I actually weren't speaking at that moment. And I was like, fine, you can invite him, but she's not coming. That girl's not coming. So he came without his girlfriend. That was in December. And then January, we went on our first date, got engaged in March, and married in September. So,
Oh, okay. So it was like, yeah, once you reconnected, that was it.
yeah.
Now, that must have been so interesting for your sister-in-law to have you as a roommate, and for the girlfriend at that time, like, it must have been very
Yeah.
like, how is my, boyfriend's sister best friends with her ex? Like,
Yeah.
and roommates with her ex. Oh my gosh.
Very challenging. Very
Re
challenging. Yeah.
Well, you survived all that, and you were married
Hmm.
for 24 years,
Hmm.
and before he passed. So, tell us a little bit about your home life, your
Hmm.
children, and then his diagnosis, please.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I was 26 when we got married. We had our first child when I was 28 and he was 30. Everything was great until Gavin was about 6 months old and he started having some medical issues. And 2.5 years later, after many, 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 many doctors, we found out that he had cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease that affects all of your mucus producing cells. And at the time, I was 30, 32, like 30. Um, got the life expectancy for someone with CF was 32 at the time. So, and I was 6 months pregnant with my second child, and it's a genetic disease. So I'm not super patient. So I immediately got an amniocentesis and found out that Jake would be born with CF as well. So I had my two for two kids that we're going to have a very short life and a very complicated life. So that threw us into the whole world of cystic fibrosis. So John and I became really great partners in that world because we decided, we're like, we know a lot of people, we can make an impact. And we did. And we just started fundraising and raising awareness and doing a lot. And honestly, we became the number one fundraising team in Georgia our very first year. And we've remained one of the top fundraising teams in the whole country throughout the rest of the years, even now. And so we both took on a lot of leadership roles. So we were a really great team in that realm. Our third child, we always wanted three. We did in vitro so they could test the embryos and find out, make sure that Sabrina wouldn't be born with CF. And then we had our fourth child who is our bonus baker, I like to call him. And so he was not
He was baking
planned.
in the
He was
oven.
he was not planned, but oh god, he's my greatest gift. And so he does not have cystic fibrosis. So
Mhm.
we that was like thing that we did together. John was building his own practice at the time with financial planning. He moved here with that company, but then started building his own practice. And yeah, and so life was good despite the
Right, because you
challenges
were
and
already yeah, because you
yeah.
already basically were confronted with grief or anticipatory
Hmm.
grief just from the
Yes.
diagnosis of both your children. So you had already been
Hmm.
going through that together as a couple
Yes.
with that, and
Yeah.
how you handled it was by creating a lot of awareness and fundraising. You
Hmm.
were able to manage it that way. This says
Yeah.
a lot. I did not know that about you in your
Mm-mm.
bio. So this says a lot about how you are now, what you're doing now, because you
Yes.
already were carrying that torch years
Hmm.
ago when you first became parents.
Yeah. I literally refer to that time as my training wheels for
Yeah.
the cancer diagnosis because when John was diagnosed, he was always super healthy and he had some headaches in October of 2018. And finally, after his clients said he didn't seem right, his friends and his family said, you need to go to the doctor. He didn't go to the doctor. But when a client said it, he went to the doctor one day after work and they found a tumor. And, that just turned our lives upside down. I always refer to like when you get a cancer diagnosis, it's like learning a new language, but you're under a massive time crunch. He was given 12 to 14 months to live because it was glioblastoma, very aggressive. And he was 50 years old at the time. And our youngest was 9, and Gavin was 20. The oldest was 20. So because of the training wheels, we went to work. his sister that I mentioned, Jess, she's an academic, and his other sister is also an academic. So they took on like research, clinical trials, all that stuff. My sister went to culinary school and loves all things food and nutrition. She took on that part, like how to fuel his body in the best way. I, because of my stuff with cystic fibrosis, my boys, I I'm I knew early on that I wanted to attack the disease from all angles, not just Western medicine. So I was very much into working with naturopaths and Eastern medicine already. So I took that part on and incorporated that into our toolbox for John's health. He focused on his own self, doing major workouts, eating keto, like doing all this stuff. So our whole family focus went to his health, of course. And but we had a great team, and we all went, to the appointments together and got. And I mean, I really attribute he lived very healthy 2 years, really very healthy 2 years, despite chemo, radiation, clinical trials, craniotomies. He's doing all the things, but really healthy beyond what he was given.
Yeah.
And he ended up living for 3 years with glioblastoma. So it was a
A
I say a
blessing in
blessing.
disguise. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I know,
yeah,
yes.
but
I understand.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the things that
So
we
mhm,
it's hard to say it, but you can say it now in
mhm,
hindsight, right, of these
mhm,
blessings. I mean, even just, how I titled my podcast, sometimes it could seem like, "What do you mean grief, gratitude?" And
mhm.
but there is an element of grateful, being
Yeah,
grateful in certain aspects of life amidst something that is so hard, and it
mhm,
really does kinda keep you anchored in those moments of hardship.
for sure, for sure. And you know, I was telling you before we started that I've listened to several of your episodes already, and what one of your previous guests had said about the beauty and the gift of his passing. That resonated with me so much because he was home, we were home, everybody was with him. The day that morning I woke up, I knew it was the day. I knew it. And I called his mom and I called his family and I said, "You need to come over." So he was surrounded, and we played his favorite music, and it was so beautiful. And it's people like that, like the title of your podcast,
Yes.
people say that's so weird, but it
No.
was so beautiful. It was like watching a baby being born is such a beautiful, miraculous moment, as was watching John's spirit leave. And it was, yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah.
Goosebumps because I relate 100%. And
Mhm.
that's how it
Yeah.
was with my mom, the same. We were
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
around and the same. It felt like one of the most spiritual experiences I had.
Yes.
Now, this is not that to say that this is for everybody, right? Not
Right.
everybody's death is that way, but, but for us, same. It
Oh,
felt
yeah.
that way. It's just what a yeah, blessing.
What a gift. It was a
It
gift, you know?
Yes, to be
Mhm.
witnessing that entrance into this other realm,
Yes.
top right? As they exit
Into the
this one,
next.
enter the other one.
Mhm.
Um, thank you for sharing that, Pam. Pam, with, once he got diagnosed, at what point did you guys start doing the little video clips that then you turned into now a podcast, the Coffee, Cancer, and Cocktails?
We decided very early on. We're very enmeshed in our environment, in our community. John coached everything, so everybody knew him. I was always involved in the team mom and all that stuff, and with all of our fundraising. So, when rumors start flying about John's got this, John's got that, I decided that I was going to kind of take control of the narrative, and I did a Facebook live for the first time ever, and I was so nervous. I was like shaking, but I wanted people to hear the diagnosis, see my face, and hear my voice, and not just read it and interpret it however they wanted. So I did that. And it had such a good response that we were like, well, wait a second. Maybe we should do it like this throughout the journey. Instead of opening a caring bridge or doing something blogging about it, we just made that decision from the day one to do every update we did, pretty much all the updates. I started a Facebook page called Coffee, Cancer, and Cocktails, and we Facebook lived everything. And I did updates in between on there, but we had, oh my gosh, I want to say there were 50 some odd videos throughout the 3 years. didn't do them as much at the end. John wasn't as comfortable being on as he grew sicker. But yeah, it's just a really very raw, very transparent. Sometimes we were laughing, sometimes we were fighting, especially when he had steroids on board. Sometimes we were crying. Sometimes we were celebrating. It just depended on what the news was that day. And we shared it all, and it was live streamed. So there was no editing, there was nothing. And yeah, I just took all of those. I had them kind of sitting on a private channel on YouTube, and then thought, it's kind of our origin story for what I'm doing now. So I did just take all of those episodes and turn them into a contained podcast, did a wrap up, you know, where are we now kind of thing, and just did like a standalone podcast as a place to hold the origin story. Yeah.
Beautiful, and it's just something that now you and the kids and
Hmm.
future grandkids or whatever
Hmm.
can now listen to his voice, see his videos, like,
Hmm.
that is just a gift. It's what a
Yes.
gift, that you're still
Yeah.
able to connect in that way to
Hmm. Absolutely.
him as well. Boy, that's wonderful. Now, at what point did you decide to start Widows Who Whine? Like, in your journey, so you've gone through the grief, then you're, like,
Hmm.
needing community. You created your own
Yeah.
community. So share with us how that was.
Yeah. Well, after John died, I grew up Catholic, but I don't subscribe to religion at this stage in my life, and I think that really started when the boys were diagnosed. I had a hard time justifying that in my mind, and then all the other stuff that bad stuff comes from religion. I became very spiritual, and um, when John died, I was looking for the grief support, and I found that everything had such a heavy religious overtone. So I tried a bunch of different ones, and they just didn't speak to me. So I was introduced to someone who's a life coach, but she's a certified grief recovery counselor, and I hired her. I still work with her now, not for grief, but just for life. And I did my healing journey through her one on one, and that was 6 months or so after John died. I started working with her. Well, I belong in Roswell, Georgia. It's a big community, and there's a Facebook page for Roswell moms, and it's huge, it's 10,000 people. And so inevitably, there's people posting about my mom, my dad just died, my mom needs this, my best friend's husband just died, my sister, and every single time it was all those resources. And so I was like, oh, this isn't for everybody. There's got to be something else. So that's what got my brain spinning about how to create a community for people that didn't that didn't resonate for them. The church stuff didn't resonate as much, and a lot of people do both. It's which is totally fine. So I wanted mine to have not be a grief group, but be a social group where women can come together with shared experience. And you don't have to have, I say, all the masks of widowhood, the strong one, the silent one, all the masks that come along with it. Just be who you are with people who get it. So I put it on my Facebook page and put it on that mom's page and said, I'm opening my home. Anybody want to come on over, and we'll drink a glass of wine together. And 14 women showed up the first night, and that was February of 2023. And so we all just kind of together said, what do we want? What do we want this to look like? And we wanted it to be social. We wanted it to be joyful. We wanted it to be like a place to laugh and have sisterhood. And so I decided I would organize one social thing a month. And so I did axe throwing and candle making and wine tasting and all the different things. And it's just grown and grown to the point that now we have almost 400 women in our area, which is crazy. And 35 to 90 years old, and all these offshoots have happened. I'm like, this is your group, ladies, whatever you want it to look like. So we have book club, we have widows who dine, widows who golf, widows who poker, widows who mahjong, a coffee club. Oh my gosh, widows who trivia, widows who cornhole. I mean, there's all these
This is
whatever they want to do.
amazing.
I know. It's
Amazing.
so awesome.
I love it
It's so awesome.
because and what you said that it's not necessarily to talk about the grief, but the understanding of knowing that the people you're with have
Hmm.
that shared experience. I heard this by Estelle, oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget her name.
Esther Perel.
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh,
Esther
uh-huh.
Perel, in one of
Mhm,
the podcasts, she was sharing how a lot of times when people have gone through something, they end up kind of gathering in communities. And there's
mhm.
for example, let's just say people that had gone through the Holocaust,
Yeah,
right? They come, they gather, they're together. And there's this it's not that you talk about it, but there's this knowing
yeah.
that you've had this shared experience. So therefore, it's like it just changes how you interact
Mhm,
because you already know the nuances behind this. And this can happen with any cultural thing. It happens, I think, often too when people move to a new country and you end up seeing like, why are all the people from I'm from Colombia originally. Let's say, why is
mhm.
she hanging out with Colombian? Because there's these like I don't have to explain all my
Yeah.
mannerisms or the way I say things or anything. There's this
Mhm.
known thing. Same with
Yes,
your community that you've
totally.
created. And it's so important to have that. So this is incredible. And then within that umbrella, then you have all these other
Yeah. It's
subgroups.
so cool. I just sit back sometimes and I'm just like, it is like my proudest accomplishment, my kids, of course,
Of
I'll say that,
course, but
of
this is
course,
another kid.
but yeah, it is. I just like I just see these transformations and I've done a lot of work. I've worked with a branding company. I've done all this stuff to really dial in on what I'm doing and what my purpose is. And I've discovered through that process that there are lots of resources. I won't say a lot, but there are resources for widows for surviving widowhood, but there are no resources for thriving. And so many of us, it doesn't matter how old you are, we're treated as though when your husband dies, it's also the end of your life. But we're all still living. We're all still in the middle of our lives. Many, many, many of us are still raising our children. So now we have all these different roles that we're trying to take on. And I always say your friends are great. They're really great, especially in the beginning, but they all move on and go back to living their lives. And when they include you, you're either hanging out with your single friends who are, annoyed with men and talking bad about them, and then there's your couple friends and you're the third or the fifth wheel. So you're always sort of the outsider in these social settings. But when we're all together, we can talk about dating, we can talk about this, we can talk about the I always say the annoying head tilt that you get, like, how are you, and how annoying that is. And you can do all the things because, like you said, everybody gets it. Like, you just get it. And I share this story all the time, but to me it is like the biggest example of why this group is so important. Because at book club one night, I was there, and this woman walked in, and it was her first time coming to any Widows Who Wine event. And she walked in and literally started crying. And I went up to her and I was like, okay, talk to me. What's happening? What's going on? And she said, I've been a widow for 10 years, and this is the first time I feel like I can breathe. And I was like, that to me, I mean, I share that story all the time, but because that to me was such a powerful moment, a light bulb moment to me, that creating this space where you can just be and be understood, and you don't have to wear all those masks, and you don't have to explain or talk about it, or if you want to talk about it, you can. It's just like sacred space that you can just be, and there's so few places where you can just be.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
And what you just shared too, that part of itself, like not only community with people that understand, but the fact that you can do something social when a lot of times you do feel
Mhm.
like the fifth wheel here or or things
Yeah.
like that happens a lot too with women that go through divorce or anything
Yeah.
that they're kind of like, now what is my social life
Mhm.
gonna look like now? Because like I don't get invited to
Mhm.
dinners now because so this way
Mhm.
you create that social you always have your plus one, in your case, your plus 399
That's
other
right.
women.
Yeah,
You can
exactly. We
pick,
do that
you
too. We're
can
like,
choose,
anybody want
yeah.
to go do this? Anybody want to
Yeah.
go watch this show? I know. It's awesome. It's so
Yes, you
awesome.
always have someone that you're
Yeah.
able to go. That is fantastic. Hi, I just wanted to take a quick pause and ask that if this episode is speaking to you, I'd love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. Just go to my website, Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between, and you will be receiving some of my newsletters. I send every probably couple of weeks. Also, if someone has popped into your mind and you feel that this is something they would resonate with, please send them this episode right now because it may just be what they needed to hear. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, so those are the stories then with how you started then Widows Who podcast. Now, tell
Mhm.
us podcast. Did you just hear me say
I
Widows
did.
Who Whine? You do podcast too. So let's
I
talk
do.
about your
Uh-huh.
other podcast and then we'll kind of navigate into the book. So tell
Okay.
us about your most recent podcast.
Well, it's funny because listening to yours, it's kind of similar to yours actually. And I got the idea soon after John died, and then it got backburnered because of all the widows who whine stuff. I just didn't have the bandwidth, but I've since come back to it, and it's called the Lost Love Stories. And what I realized is being a widow or anybody who's lost someone. Um, People become afraid to talk about them because they don't know how you're going to react, or they don't know if you're going to start crying or it's going to upset you or whatever. So people just stop talking about them. And I'm like, that's so weird. And it's just a weird sensation. And so then that kind of was the idea, like a place to come and talk about your person, right? Your love story. Doesn't matter if it's your husband, your wife, your sister, your best friend, whomever it is, a place to talk about them. What I also found is when someone dies, you're not allowed to talk about any of the bad stuff anymore. Like the times that my
Yeah,
husband
that
drove me
that I know.
freaking crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that the part that we put people on pedestals,
Mhm.
it's something that I also
It's
don't
so
like.
weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's like they were a whole person. They were not
Yeah.
just this, right? They're a whole person. Yeah, I love
Exactly,
that.
exactly. So it is, it's like glorifying or, it's what's that other it's like, I like turning
Idolizing.
them into this idolizing, like, yeah, they're this mystical
Like a
person.
saint, like
Yeah,
sanctify, like
yeah.
sanctify. Yeah.
But then you're missing the true person because
Hmm.
none of us are that way. So, I wanted the podcast to be a place where you talk about the things that drove you freaking crazy, but also the great times, your love story, like the best things, but then how important it is to find your way back to joy and heal and learn to live with that grief. It doesn't go away. You just learn to live with it in a healthy way so it doesn't destroy you. We've seen grief destroy plenty of people, right? And so how do you live with it in a healthy way and find your way back to joy and find, that purpose, that passion, whatever it is. So it sort of takes people through that. And I only have a couple of episodes out. My very first episode, that was my real guest episode, was with my son, my second son, Jake, who um, ugh, he actually lost his best friend to a snowboard accident 6 months before his dad died. So, two massively important people in his life in such a short period of time. And he was 20, yeah, 2019 at the time. So, he did a great job on the podcast. He's my,
Yeah, he was so natural.
yeah,
I
yeah,
heard part of that interview.
yeah,
He's just so natural, and I love seeing that little conversation between the two of
yeah.
you. So that is so nice. I would love to be a guest if you ever need guests. Just
I
let me
would
know.
love it. Yes,
It's
absolutely.
I rarely end up like looking for myself to be guest in places, but I love when I'm a guest. I love being
Mhm.
it's terrifying to be on the other side. I love asking the questions. So
Yeah,
it's usually
it is very
terrifying to
different.
be a guest. Right? It's like, wait,
Yep.
I don't know what am I going to answer if they ask
Uh-huh.
this.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so I feel you as you're here with me, but I try to make my podcast be very just conversational so that way it doesn't feel like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna say the wrong thing?" So
Right.
and yours is that way too. It's just
Yep,
very natural.
totally. Yeah.
So I love that. Okay, now you co-wrote a book with your nephew.
Mhm.
It's called Where's the Key to the Safe? And share with us because it has a whole other the
Mhm.
other part of the title is a long one that says more. So I can look or you could
Yeah.
tell me because I'm like
No,
as
I'll
I'm
tell you.
opening here. Yes.
Yeah, so it's called "Where's the Key to the Safe?" and the subtitle is "How to Avoid Probate Pitfall and Maximize Family Finance." So that really gives you the idea of what the book is about. My husband, as I said, was a financial advisor, had a really successful business. He had brain cancer. We hoped that it would not end the way it did, but knew that it would very likely end that way. And we had 3 years to prepare for all of that. Our own CPA, our own lawyer. We had a team. And when he died, it's all the things you don't know until you know, right? And so as we're going through the business of death, I refer to it as my nephew
I call it
Cameron.
the same.
Do you
I call it
do?
the same, yeah. Yeah, I'm like, all this
Uh-huh.
business that really does not even allow you
Uh-huh.
time to really grieve, really,
No.
in that first few, because 'cause you're just really doing all the admin, all the admin
Yeah.
stuff that goes in. Gosh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
okay.
trying to
So,
do it in a
when you
grief
have
fog.
foggy brain, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
impossible,
Yeah.
impossible. So Cameron, my nephew, is also a financial advisor. He worked for my husband, and my husband was actually his father figure. So he went through the whole thing with me, the business of death, and I started thinking. You can see how my brain works now. I started thinking like, holy cow! If this is this hard for me, when I had time to plan, I had a financial advisor for a husband. I had a team of people. How does the regular everyday person whose husband or wife or anybody dies of a heart attack, like suddenly, unexpectedly, and they don't have a whole team? How do they manage this at the worst possible time? Like I said, when you're in that grief fog, I have very few memories of the entire first year after my husband died, much less try to make massively important financial decisions affecting your family. So that's what gave me the idea to write the book. So I started writing it, and then I was like, I don't really know anything about financial planning. So I can talk
She's like,
I can talk
"John,
about
John,
I
John,
know.
can you come in now?
I know,
Come
exactly.
through, I need to know how to do this."
I'm sure he's laughing like, "Yeah, okay," because every time you try to say, "Come on, we gotta sit down, we gotta do this, we gotta do that," I'm like, "No, that's your job. Nope, nope, nope." And the reason for the title is because I didn't even know where the key to our safe was, and I didn't know how to open it when I finally found the key, and he would always say to me, "You gotta figure out how to open this safe, passports or whatever are in there." I'm like, "No, I don't. I have you." And Cameron and I were literally like YouTubing how to open this stupid safe. So that's why I called it "Where's the Key to the Safe?" And it literally we created a workbook to go along like chapter by chapter, and it covers everything from everything. Like, do you have adequate insurance on your car, on your umbrella policy, on your life, on your health, on your everything, to business continuation plans, to celebration of life, to where do you keep the passwords, everything, so that anybody you're financially tied to, you do all this work ahead of time. Fill out the workbook. You can take the workbook to your estate planning lawyer and just be done. And it's the best gift you can give anybody you're financially tied to. So, again, your parents, your siblings, your children, your spouse, anybody that you have a financial, your business partner that you have a financial connection to, get all this stuff done ahead of time so you're not left trying to figure it out at the worst possible time when really big, serious mistakes can be made.
Alri Now, you guys had already then planned certain things. What was one of these that was still, even with all the planning, that gave you so much headache during the business of death time,
Yeah.
of dying?
Well, one of the craziest things that I still cannot believe. Well, everybody thinks all you need is a will, which is not true. You need an estate plan. Doesn't matter how wealthy you are. People think only rich people have estate plans, but everybody should have an estate plan. But we had a will, and knowing my husband, I know somewhere out there in the world, there's an updated will because our will was so old that my fourth child, was not even included in the will. And so, you know, thankfully everything fell to me anyway. But I was like, how in the hell did we not think about that in the 3 years since he was diagnosed with brain cancer? Like things like that. The other things that were really challenging were like credit cards, because if I'm an authorized user, thankfully I had my own credit cards. Like we kept a lot of things very, like he had his own checking accounts, I had mine. We had some combined. So I wasn't put in a circumstance where I had no money available to me, no liquid money. I have friends now in the widow world who they were their husband's credit cards and they were just an authorized user and they're shut down, no access to money. Um, Same with accounts. We had some of that with some of his credit cards, titles of our vehicles, my car. He bought it for me. I was a stay-at-home mom my whole life. He bought it for me, but it was in his name. So when it came, time to sell that car, uh, I had to it was just the extra work instead of being co-titled, where I could just go do it. I had to go, then bring the death certificate and make everything just much, much more difficult instead of just having everything be, you know, co-owned instead of just a user or not on the title at all. So just things like that that were just annoyances that were not necessary.
Yes. No, no, and yeah, and the fact that that takes so much time away from you being
Mhm.
able to then really fully even just be present in your grief, be
Mhm.
there for your kids because 'cause you're dealing with all these things. In the book, does it have it like a little bit like timeline, like which things you should like really have done, like by order of importance
It
kind of
y
thing?
sort of. We kinda did it like Cameron does such a great job. So Cameron, so his name is Cam. We start it every chapter, say it's insurance. It says Pam, and I come in and give a little anecdotal story. I'm a storyteller. So I give the
Mhm.
story, and then Cam, and he comes in and gives the professional opinion, the professional insight. But he asks a lot of reflective questions, and just to get you thinking about things. And but he's a great writer too, in that it's not sterile and cold like typical finance books are. It's very conversational. And we really purposely did that so that people weren't. I read all those books after John died because I was determined. I was like, nobody's going to take advantage of me. I'm going to know what I'm doing. And they're so freaking boring that I was like, oh, I couldn't even stay focused. So we really wanted it to be warm and easy to digest. So Cameron's advice, being the person, the professional, he is like, take the chunks that you can manage right now. Like, take the chunks, and it doesn't have to be done in order. So the book is not ordered in order of importance. Like, read through and be like, today I can handle figuring out whether I have enough car insurance. Tomorrow maybe I can figure out how what it looks like to revamp my will. Just whatever works for you in that time, just be doing something toward completion. So that's the main thing. Getting all your beneficiaries set up on your 401ks, and that's a big one that people we do now. We do speaking engagements and workshops and seminars for people, and this one I hear all the time, and people are shocked by it. Like, if you mentioned getting divorced, if you had your life insurance policy or your Roth or whatever, and your previous spouse was a beneficiary and you never changed it, even if you get remarried and you die, that ex gets all the stuff that they're a beneficiary on. So it's like those things you don't think about because you're like, money's
Yeah, because 'cause
going
they're
into that.
tucked
You don't
away.
think, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like all of those things that you go, oh my God, okay. You know, everyone's eyes go, what? When we mention that
Mhm.
thing. So that's a big one. So yeah, it's just like taking you through each step to really get everything in a good place, and leave the best gift you can leave for the people you're leaving behind.
Yeah, yeah, that because it really I keep oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get your book because my husband I do this all the time. We're always on
Mhm.
podcasts, all these. I know the frailty of life, I know it.
Yeah.
Yet there's a lot of things we're not prepared for,
Mhm.
financially and stuff. I'm like, if something happens and if something happens to us, like, or
Yeah.
and we need to leave it clear so that things like probate and can you explain
Mhm.
like how does that work? What it's like the state always ends up kind of holding things or not
Mhm.
always?
If you have a proper estate plan, it doesn't go to
It
probate.
does.
And that's what you want to avoid, because if anything goes to probate, it's public information. So anybody can find out all your business, including people that are kin that might say, "Oh, I'll take a stake in that." I'll have some of that. And if you don't have it set up properly in your estate plan, they might have a right to come and get some of it. So it's all that, like, having all of that spelled out. And I learned so much of that when I was doing reading for especially for state estate plans. And I'm so glad I did, because our lawyer that we had at the time that John had the relationship with, he was great, but he had a very standard way of doing things. So by reading, and he was old school, and And so I just learned new things about my kids and like potential. My kids aren't married yet, but if they get married, what is that going to look like? What how do you plan for all of these different scenarios? And we have a lake house, and just really protecting the lake house so that if something happens to me, the kids aren't trying to figure out who's going to pay to fix the roof. And then all these things that create division within the family that I've seen happen. If one of your kids is making a lot more money than somebody else and they're paying, then they're suddenly the owners of the house. I've set all that up so that house is protected from anybody anywhere. Costs are covered. My kids will never fight over the lake house, like those kinds of things that I just taught myself by reading. And so that stuff's all included in our book too. It's just things really you don't again, you don't know until you know. And because I've seen different situations happen with other people, it raised my awareness that okay, this could happen to me. So we tried to put all of the stuff in there to really cover all the bases.
That's wonderful. It's a great resource then for
Mhm.
anybody that's listening to this, whether you've already gone through grief or not. Like you said, this
Mhm.
is for anybody else that you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
any financial connection at all to make
Mhm.
sure to be prepared. Again, the that book is called "Where's the Key to the Safe?" And
Mhm.
I'll make sure to link all the websites below here so that people can get that, as well as Widows Who Wine, which right now is in the Roswell, Atlanta, Georgia area. So people can check that out as well as your
Yeah.
podcast. Pam, is there something I have not asked you that you want to share with the audience?
I think that I just went the other day to one of the women in our group. It was her 1 year anniversary of her husband's death, and so she did a vigil for him. And I went, and I never knew him because I've only known her since she became a widow. And uh, so someone came up to me and asked me how I knew him, and I was like, I didn't. And I explained the situation, and she was like, oh. And I said, how about you? And she said, oh, our sons grew up together, and all this, so we're taking care of her, and we're taking care of him, and we're just always there for him. And I said, good, make sure it stays that way, because here's what happens. First year, you don't remember anything. Second year, you start feeling all the feels because you are more present and really feeling the absence. And I said, that's when the friend circle starts going back to their lives. So I said, remember that, and keep checking in on her, keep checking in on her son, because it gets very lonely in year 2. And then you go into year 3. It's it's like everybody's gone. And so, I mean, I didn't feel that myself specifically because I had created this group, but also because my sister actually moved in with me after my husband died. She's been single, Cameron's mom, and she has a 17-year-old daughter. So they moved in, and we co-parent. We're the Dos Madres, and and so we have
I
her
love it.
her her
Create your
daughter.
other that could be your other podcast,
I
Dos Madres.
know. Yes, she wants to do a podcast on all the not so fun dating world because she's single too. She wants to just make fun of all the dating apps, which it would also be fun.
Yeah.
But so I think that's my number one. That's my number one thing. Also, I mentioned that there are all these resources for surviving and not thriving, and I would say to anyone who knows someone who's lost their spouse, widows especially, support them in the thriving. There's so much. I feel like there's a lot of judgment. Like if you start dating too soon, or you start, you're out laughing, you feel like you're going to get judged for laughing. I guess I remember I gained a lot of weight when John was sick, and it happened to be COVID. It happened to be, I was going through menopause. I literally gained almost 40 pounds. And I didn't want to start losing the weight after he died because I felt like people were going to judge me saying I was getting myself ready for the market. And I was like,
Goodness.
I don't want that judgment on me for that. So it took me a while to like come back to taking care of myself. Um, because of that. And you hear that a lot, like, oh, I guess she's gotten over him, she's ready to get out there. So there's a lot of judgment. So I would say don't judge, support the thriving stage, because there's a lot of chapters left in her book, and help her reach those, find the joy again, live her best life, and thrive. Get rid of the masks, for her, get rid of the judgment from the general population, and just support one another, and everybody, lift everybody up, and support to the thriving stage. So
Love
that's awesome.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. Those are fabulous words, and that goes for everybody too, just as
Mhm.
they're grieving, like just widows and anybody else. People,
1000%.
yeah, just support them while they're thriving,
Mhm.
and celebrate that they're doing well, like as well.
Mhm.
And their grief will not go away, like you were saying. It's just they are choosing joy in certain
Mhm.
parts of their life too. So that is awesome. Thank you, Pam, so much.
You're
It
welcome.
was a joy getting to chat with you and getting to know you and getting to know a little bit of John through you too and the stories. So thank you once again. Again, this was
Yeah.
Pam Baker. Make sure to check out her website. And again, the links will be in the show notes. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.